All right, we're doing a spiritual checkup in our lives as we face the new year. We've talked about checking our hearing. Spent a couple class times on that. Last week we began the vision test, and we talked about the problems that come along with spiritual vision. We've discussed how that not all that we see is delightful. The things that we see that can seem to be delightful to our eyes, not all of those things are good for us. So don't be tricked into thinking if it looks good, it must be good. That's not always true. We talked about the eye being the lamp of the body, and that God's commandments, of course, are the standard for clear vision. Then we talked about some vision problems. We spoke of proud or haughty eyes. The Bible condemns that, looking down on someone. We'll have more to talk about that during our sermon time this morning, so we'll hold on to that a bit. We spoke of hypocritical eyesight, and that's, again, just judging in a way that we wouldn't judge ourselves. Then we spoke of spiritual blindness, and what a problem that is. Jesus dealt with many of the religious leaders of his day and said that, well, you see, but you really don't see, and that's really the worst type of, not to downplay physical blindness. That's obviously a devastating physical problem, but spiritual blindness, when we can't see what God wants us to see, that's a problem. We discussed envious eyes, and that's tied, of course, to seeing something that I want and that I shouldn't have. And sometimes we go to means to try to make that happen, and we shouldn't. And then, of course, Jesus had some things to say about lustful eyes, how our eyes can lead us down a path of sin from which it's hard to turn away from. So that brings us up to our starting point today, and today we want to discuss what we can do to improve our spiritual eyesight. And there's a number of ways, and I'll invite your comments as we work our way through this list. And maybe you'll think of some things, of course, that I didn't think of. Kendra mentioned, I believe, last Sunday morning in class that both, as we've seen with our hearing and our spiritual eyesight, there is an intentionality that needs to be there. Our vision spiritual vision isn't going to improve unless we intentionally take steps to change that, right? In the same way, with physical health, right? Until we make the determination to get up and do that exercise, that walking or whatever. That's right, picking on you. But yeah, nothing happens usually without the effort putting in. So let's talk about some eye or vision training, and I've worded all these kind of with intentionality in mind. It says, I will do this, or you will do this if you choose to. The Bible speaks of that we need to be careful about, make the determination, I will set no worthless thing before my eyes, right? In fact, that's the very wording in Psalm 101, verse 3. Psalm 101, verse 3 says, I will set no worthless thing before my eyes. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not fasten its grip on me. I want to say for a while you could buy a sticker that you could put on your, back when, the TV screen, right? I will set no worthless thing before my eyes. It's just a reminder. Maybe you had one of those in the day. I haven't seen one in a while. But that's the concept, right? It's hard enough to have godly vision when we intentionally put something in our way that's worthless. Mm-hmm. Oh. Okay, we're good. Okay. Yeah, those things, and again, there's nothing wrong with nice things, but yet we have to be careful about not setting them before us to where it almost becomes a worshipful thing, right? And that could be anything. It can be a car. It can be a home or whatever it is that's attractive to my eyesight. So it's hard enough, again, to hone in our spiritual vision without intentionally having some things that block what we really ought to be seeing. Psalm 119, verse 37 says, "Turn away my eyes from looking at vanity and revive me in your ways." The psalmist asked God. So sometimes we have to look away, right? That's a godly thing to do in many circumstances. No worthless thing. Any other examples you can think of that might fit that? Or maybe if you want to share a personal something you learned along this line. Okay. Yeah. Joseph and what I guess it's just Potiphar's wife. There's no name there, right? Yeah. Uh, uh, before we're done, we'll talk about here in a couple points. It's good to fix your eyes on certain things, and your mind's probably already going to a verse along that line. But look away. There's a version from a movie that's coming to my mind. Look away, look away. Anyone else? Okay. 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 Right.
Christ taught the parable about the man who had the demons. He cast them out and didn't do anything, just sit around and think, look, and they came back worse than they started.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't leave a void, for sure. And as Wayne was talking about, you have to train yourself for good habits. In Kendra's pain coaching, I've heard her use the phrase over and over again about training new neural pathways in your brain, right? You get used to the old way, maybe looking at something you shouldn't in ways that you shouldn't, and you have to retrain. And that's a principle that works over and over again. All right, number two. First of all, again, I'll set no worthless thing before my eyes. I need to determine to do that. Job says it this way. It's similar, but maybe a little bit different context. This is the idea of making a covenant with our eyes. I will make a covenant with my eyes. A covenant is just an agreement, right? And it's a decision. Again, that intention there that not only will I be careful about setting something in my line of sight that would be tempting, but to make an agreement. Here he phrases it in this context, and you know Job's story. He went back and forth with his so-called friends that were trying to convict him of a life of sin, that was his troubles were due to some maybe hidden sin in Job's life, and Job searched and couldn't come up with anything. But in Job 31, verse 1, Job says, "I have made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I gaze at a virgin?" Right? So I like that wording. It's just, I sit down and says, if you will, eyes can't sign a contract, but you can make an agreement with that part of your spiritual life that I'm going to work at not viewing things that I shouldn't. Covenant with my eyes. Thoughts on that? Mm-hmm.
It's almost hard to do that. In other words,
Okay.
any place you go, anything you do, not necessarily even with things the salt is still the same, well, I have to have that. I want to do that, I want to go there. And it's not just social media, although that certainly rises to the top.
Right.
The billboards and
Yep.
run out license plate.
Yeah.
Visual work, I know, visual work.
Okay.
My biggest weakness. Cars don't buy it.
Okay.
And it just seems like we're salted all the,
That's why this is so important, isn't it? You're exactly right. We live in a world and that you're inundated with things that probably aren't good to look at. You can't check out your groceries at the store without, they line the places where you stand with things you probably don't need to ponder, right? So that takes some willpower. I thought I saw someone else. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right.
like, for example, social media, there's a social media that I really like. But every time I go on it, after a couple of scrolls, there's something I can see. So I take it out off of the things I like other content. But
Yeah, and that's, again, that's a choice, and you're exactly right. That's how most of those are designed, that, well, we'll give you what you're looking for, but then there's always stuff thrown in that you shouldn't, so that makes it difficult. Uh-huh. Yeah.
there's a lot of movies that I really want to see
Okay. Right. Okay. All right. Peter, and then over to Wayne.
Well, when you go to the store, you're supposed to make a list. But how many times do you go to the store and come home with more than a?
Not me.
they want some sort of payback for what they see as a slight. Give a great example, our last president, Jim Carter, a whole bunch of people in his family, even though they're not being charged with it. Basically, keep revenge from happening in his eyes, he thought revenge would happen.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
he's pretty partisan. I think of myself, watching a movie like Air Force One, where basically bad people take over the plane, and you get to where you want that person to die.
Yeah.
You want them to die. It's so evil. You want them to die. And I started thinking to myself, that's not right. I really shouldn't feel that way.
Okay.
And we all get that way in our hearts. So bad, we're willing to basically
Okay.
kill them off.
Was there, oh, sorry. Was there, Joy, do you have your hand up? Okay. There was, go ahead.
A few years ago, there was a coffee table book in a lot of Christians' homes. That wasn't purely on my part, I just visited it, regions of Madison County. And that was a pretty popular book, right, and a pretty popular movie. It just evolved into almost a cult.
Sure.
Too strong a word.
Advertisers know the power of this sense, right?
Well written.
Okay.
People never make you choose. Well, they didn't pay for husbands. Well,
Yeah.
might as well.
Okay. So again, this is the spiritual battle we're in, trying to maintain a godly vision. So let's talk about the other side of the picture a bit then. What can we, if we need to not focus on certain things, if we got to be careful about looking at worthless things, and it takes this intentionality, what can we do? Well, number one, or this, I guess number three on the list, but first on this side of the issue would be to fix our eyes on Jesus. That's plainly said in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, and it's interesting there in context because in the book of Hebrews, the writer is dealing with some Jewish Christians that were being so intensely persecuted that they were thinking, I'm not sure Christianity is worth it. I didn't have this much trouble back in the old way. I'm thinking about going back. So they're starting to look back, maybe kind of like Lot's wife. And here's what he reaches the latter stages of Hebrews. And he gets to one of the therefores. He says, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, and that, by the way, just looks back to chapter 11 and all the heroes of faith that's gone before. Since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. So it's interesting there. We're called as believers to look at Jesus. It takes intense focus in athletic events, right? Or most any job that you do well, you have to be focused, especially if your job involves marksmanship. That'd be another, you need to be not looking around, you need to be focused. But the writer here holds up Jesus as an example. Not only is he the one we should look at, but he did it in his own life, right? For the joy set before him, Jesus kept his eyes on victory.
You come down the aisle, people didn't look up. First time I was there, guy's got hand, he's not looking up past the floor. Doesn't want to be distracted by it.
Right.
We're called waving to it.
Yeah.
That's the picture right there.
Yeah.
Focus on
The best at the people who are best at what they do have their vision honed in some very, very specific ways. Yeah, it's not necessarily even good things, and this is something to remember here. Even good things can be a distraction if they're taking our eyes off Jesus. Any thoughts on that before we go on? So, again, try to avoid the distractions.
Well, you're seeing what's going on, like all football playoffs are, well, the middle linebacker, especially nowadays with the quarterback running, you've got to focus on, that one guy, otherwise, it's there, you have to be focused.
That's what they do with play action, right? They're trying to deceive the defense. Look like the quarterback's going to throw that way, and they're planning to go this way. Well, Gary? Yeah.
so you could see the army of arrow way smaller than God's army. And I think, like you're saying, we need to focus on the power of God. Not the power of the instant, the power of God. And know we're on the inside.
Hebrews 13:9, do not be carried away about with various and strange doctrines, for it is good that the heart be established by grace, not with foods, which have not profited those who have been on the Baron. They knew what to do. They knew where to get the fire, yada, 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 you know, but they offered strange fire. Fire came forth from the Lord and consumed them, and fear fell on the multitude.
Lost their focus, right?
Yeah, it's just strange to me that, man, the Word of God is not that hard to understand, and yet people still have this idea that, oh, there's something better out there. Well, we can just add a little to this. It's not going to hurt. You know, it's like, man, you don't realize what you're going to face on Judgment Day.
I don't have to go to the Old Testament, but I just look at my life.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Praying for you.
yeah, that's we acknowledge the fact that we're all have the temptation to fall short in that way. Fix our eyes on Jesus. Fix our eyes on God. The Bible encourages us to do that. Psalm 141:8, the psalmist says, "For my eyes are toward you, O God, the Lord. In you I take refuge. Do not leave me defenseless." And to build on what Gary said a moment ago, the difficulty in a lot of this is because we look with our physical eyes and we see the armies of the opposition, right? They're right before us, but we've got the protection of God that it's harder to perceive because you can't see that with your physical eyes, but it's as real as anything else. Fix our eyes on God. That's part of the issue. My eyes are toward you, O God. I will set my gaze directly ahead. Proverbs 4:25. Proverbs 4:25. Of course, the Proverbs are full of wisdom for life, right? Written to guide us. Look what it says. Let your eyes look directly ahead, and let your gaze be fixed straight in front of you. Watch the path of your feet, and all your ways will be established. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Turn your foot from evil. And perhaps if you've ever walked in a dangerous area, maybe along a hillside that's pretty steep, you know, the best thing for you to do is to, not that you're ignoring everything else around, but you better watch the path ahead, right? You don't want to trip over a rock because you're looking. I mean, it may be beautiful, right? There may be a mountain over here. But if you're going to look at the mountain, you better stop before you do that. If you're going to keep walking, you might fall off. So look at the road ahead. Gaze. Don't let your sight be distracted. Number 6 on my list, I've probably not mentioned this as we've gone along if you're keeping track, but I will walk by faith, not by sight. You know the Bible talks about that, right? 2 Corinthians 5, verses 6 and 7. Therefore, always being of good courage and knowing that while we are at home in the body, we're absent from the Lord, for we walk by faith and not by sight. Spiritual vision is keyed in on matters of faith, isn't it? Because in many cases, it's not something you can physically see, right? We can't physically see God, but yet by faith, we believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Hebrews 11, verse 1, I think, or 6, 1 or 6, one of the other of those. Yeah, hearing, and hearing by the word of God, Romans 10:17. Here we go. Do you find it difficult to walk by faith? Yeah, right. I think all of us would admit it's a struggle, or we'd all be good at it, right? Maybe you are, and that's good, but there's always the temptation, or the deceiver works to distract us. You can't see that, right? How can you believe that? Well, 2 Corinthians 4, verses 16 and 17, Paul says this. Paul, in the midst of his own persecution, Therefore we do not lose heart, but though our outer man is decaying, what's Paul saying? He says, my body's wearing out. You know, yeah. Those of us getting older understand that a little clearer all the time. Things don't work as well as they used to. The human body decays. But though our outer man is decaying, yet our inner man or person is being renewed day by day. For momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory. far beyond all comprehension, or comparison rather, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, or earthly, or material, whatever word you would like to use there. Temporal is the idea of they're locked in time. The things which are physically seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen, and there's our spiritual eyesight, are eternal. So, 2 Corinthians 4, verses 16 through 18. Again, Paul writing there, maybe just feeling the bruises and scars he had for preaching the gospel. He says, I'm not losing heart because I have the spiritual eyesight to see that even though my body's aching, Paul was beat once to where they thought he was dead. That's a pretty good beating. But so he knows what he's talking about, but he kept his vision beyond that. One more I've got, and then maybe you've thought of some. The Bible encourages us also to look for the way of escape. And of course, this is in connection with the trials that come our way, or the temptations, right? 1 Corinthians 10, verses 12 through 13. Therefore let him who thinks he stands take heed that he does not fall. No temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it. Now, that verse doesn't promise that God will force you to take the way of escape, does it? No. God provides it, but we have to look for it. Yeah. Look for the exit. Yeah. So.
What jumps out at me is there's perfect now. When you're rock climbing,
Okay.
you have to concentrate,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to let everything go away, and you can't look out, you can't look around, you have to see what your next move is, and concentrate.
Yeah.
And at the same thing, you can't, concentrate on what you're doing.
If a rock climber is going to look around, he better tie himself off, right? Okay? Not that I know anything about that. I'm not climbing on any rock. Peter did it, apparently, so he can talk to you about that. But I think he's got some bumps and bruises from that rock climbing, don't you? Yeah, you've told me those stories. So, be careful. I think of the children's song, right? Be careful, little eyes, what you see, right? There's some deep theology in that children's song, isn't there? Other thoughts? That was the end of my list. Yeah, I understand kind of a little bit probably where you're coming from, because I'm one of those guys that I likes to have my ducks in a row before I walk down that road, But sometimes it takes spiritual sight to get you to step out in faith, because it can be just, sometimes it can be as hindering. I've talked this morning about, be careful where you're walking. You might stumble and fall, but the answer to that is not ever walking. Refusing to walk by faith. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Being fearful doesn't mean you're a coward. It means you're willing to go ahead and do your job by the fear. There's things you do all the time that at least be aware of the consequences. That's one sense of spirit.
Yeah, I can't remember the total quote, but it's like, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's, yeah. Gary had his hand up. Oh, okay, go ahead.
In Proverbs, I'm pretty sure Paul heard this. What is the beginning of wisdom?
Fear.
Amen.
Fear of the Lord.
Fear is a good thing.
I think that's,
Can be.
yeah.
It's a scary thing, but he said, fear God and keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man. We don't do it, it's my choice, and I'm going to pay the consequences.
Okay.
Even though I may not realize it right now.
All right. Anything else? Hopefully there's some things maybe you can pick up on in that. Again, it's not just, these things aren't easy. As we say, if they were, all of us would be doing it, right? So we'll move on, Lord willing, next week and consider another facet of our life in this checkup and talk about that then. Thank you.
Thank